videos because of landslide, different ways to just load it out. And I think that's what makes those videos the most interesting, that blade profile. I can trust this knife, trust the lock. Welcome. Thanks for tuning NeptuneKnives. I'm going to give my impressions about using the knife as intended, just the way it is, without disassembling it, taking it apart, any modifications. And then the next couple videos following up, I'm going to be doing some harder testing on it, testing the lock and taking it apart, and really seeing if it fits that role of being a tactical folder. Because I do trust the Yojimbo 2, the Paramilitary 2, those knives, through the testing, through the videos, making these videos, I've come to know that those knives are very reliable, durable, good quality, and I would trust them in a survival situation, a defensive situation. So the first thing I want to talk about is value. If you guys do some research, you can find that this folder can be around the $180 to $200 price point, and you see it's made in Taiwan. And I do want to say actually that I think it's worth the money. The average minimum wage in Taiwan is about $3.50. So if this was made here in the US, this folder could be somewhere around $350 to make. If you understand knives and you've handled quite a few, you can see the construction. There's a lot of details between just the blade grinds, to then the compression lock that has to be a little bit more unique. Pin there to kind of hold the compression lock. To then the spring that's inside, helps with the blade retention. Of course, then you have trying to balance the knife, the standoffs, all the tolerances, getting that right. You have decent sized hardware. So overall, it's a complex knife. It's not a simple knife to make. It's definitely got a lot of details, and I think because of the size of the folder, it costs a lot to do. Now, in terms of quality, this weaving here is not very durable. You can see there. See, I just scratched that piece off. And then the finish here on these steel liners, you can see that reflection right there. Because all the edges were very sharp, and just as you use them, you can kind of see like right there, start to just kind of round off and get beat up after pocket time. These edges here are kind of sharp, along with the blade spine and the spider hole. So it doesn't have that US Spyderco smoothness. How they would smooth off those sharp edges. And this one didn't come centered. And actually, you see it's not touching, but when I push down on it, I can get the scrape. If there wasn't that raised portion, or the grind was just in a different area, like slightly higher, then it wouldn't scrape at all. Is this just mine? I'm going to open up a new one. So, someone who buys one, this is yours because I opened it. It's brand new. See, it's in its package. Here's the Yojimbo here. See, you're watching on camera, okay? I cut your package open. Sorry. And let's just see if this one is centered or not. Now this one's pretty centered. Actually, this one's pretty good. It's a little bit off to the right, but it's pretty good. And you hear the scraping? So that is just a flaw of the knife. Now there is some side play. It does move. Mine, you can feel it, but it's less than the Yojimbo. Let's see on the brand new one. This brand new one here is actually quite solid. Actually, I would say there's movement, but it's not like a knocking back and forth. So when you're cutting, obviously, you know, your hand's out of the way. You got that belly to cut with. Just like the same thing here on the military. Out of the box, the sharpness, it's not very sharp. You can do it this way. And they start cutting this way, let's see. Now let's compare that to my everyday carry, my Yojimbo 2. It does have like a sort of, when it's in your hand, like a recurve. So it can be utilitarian in purpose, but this is definitely still a tactical folder. Yeah, it just won't bite in. Yeah, lots of resistance. You can see how the initial cutting performance, in terms of at least biting into something hard, how this does. I mean, it's a hollow grind, but it's just average. In terms of like all that initial geometry and stuff, I think it could be improved. I mean, I would think actually this actually nicely like peels. I mean, it doesn't like bite in deep, but it peels very easily. The 0561. Woodworking with this knife is not exactly its forte, because you got this sort of semi, you know, tactical looking swedge right here that, you know, doesn't provide much room for your thumb. So you're not really meant to go like this and push on it like that and cut. And I would say if you're trying to push it here, then you're focusing on just using that little area right there, and that's kind of annoying and challenging too. I mean, you do get a good belly in there. It's a shame actually, I would say, for function. I wish this area was just flat. I mean, the Jimbo 2 is like just completely utilitarian. I mean, you have this large portion to just make contact. It's very comfortable right there, and you just bite in. Is the Szabo meant for that kind of use? Probably not. But I mean, sure, it would be nice. It doesn't hurt to have a knife be able to do more. The Szabo is thicker by a lot. There's more going on with the handle. It's quite busy over here, and there's more like ergonomics to keep your hand from sliding and moving around on the handle. I mean, it feels more like you're holding the handle of a sword. The blade shapes, you could say, are the same. I mean, it's still just a curved blade, you know, with like a little belly, but you know, there's more of a little upswept area right here. It could be a military if you just think about it for a second. If you just cover that, it could be the same thing as a Spyderco military blade. The size difference, it's much larger than a paramilitary too. Here's the Jimbo. Here's a zero tolerance 0561. You can see the size difference between these two. If you guys ever handled the Spyderco Dodo, it has this sort of, you can see here, these two fingers go in here, this one over there, and then this one over here. And it just kind of feels like you're holding, almost like, you know, these two fingers hold in place, these two, and it feels super secure. My hands are wet. It has a very secure grip. I mean, even if I'm holding it down here, compared to like a paramilitary 2, which can really slide out of the hand. I don't know if you guys ever held a paramilitary 2 when wet, but now in terms of tactical use, when you pull it out of your pocket, you can strike someone with the Spyderco a hole. It does stick out quite a lot, so I mean that's good for impact. And you can see here, you see the handle, the knife itself is big enough. The only problem is because of those sharp edges, I'm pretty sure you would cut your finger. So you have to round off the spine. It's a really long handle, and I would say the flaw here is this clip is way too high, you know, too far back. And when you start like this, and your finger's like that, and you need to flick it, I mean, you need it to be to where your finger can flick it around over there. A paramilitary 2, your finger's like there, and you can see, you know, and it flies out on the paramilitary 2 because there's no spring. I mean, this is, but the Szabo has a spring to help keep the blade in. So when if I hold the compression lock down, to even flick it out with your thumb, I mean, you can't like flick it out. Like you have to give it a wrist shake no matter what. You can see, but that's with like it's kind of loosened pivot right now. Either that, or you need to switch the pocket clip to tip down. And at this point, then when you pull it out of your pocket, you're ready to go and open it like that. You can see where it's locked up right now. Okay. So here's some overstrikes. You can see this on camera. And the lock hasn't moved, so that's good. Some traditional spine wax. And let's see. It hasn't moved. It's within the same spot. There's definitely some up and down play now. But it didn't fail. And the lockup hasn't changed. Just probably that lock bar got damaged a little bit. When I take it apart in the next video, we'll see how it held up and what it looks like. But at least to know that it doesn't fail against any light use. So if any general pressure or impacts and stuff, any kind of shocks to the lock area, it won't fail. The Szabo collaboration has some of Spyderco's best features, such as the compression lock, the S30V steel, the tolerances, the general build quality of knives that come from Taiwan. But I think it's mostly the design of the knife that just has a couple flaws. For example, on the Yojimbo 2, how the spiral hole is a little bit too small. I mean, it didn't really matter how strong this area was. I mean, no one's going to go batoning with their Yojimbo 2, this little box cutter tactical knife. And now you look at the Szabo folder here, knowing that it's just going to be, because of the longer blade, this portion right here, if it wasn't raised so much, or if it was moved, you can see here, then it wouldn't touch that flat right there and scrape it, which now you can kind of see a little bit on my knife. It is showing. So that's unfortunate. And also the way that the deep pocket clip sits when it's tipped up, it just sits too far. And unfortunately also some of the finish, the expense that goes into making this knife, I wish they had spent some money to round off the spine, so smooth it off so you could grip it tightly and use it as an impact weapon without risk of cutting yourself on these edges. As you can see, it's actually starting to bite into my thumb. That sharp edge, and this tension is very strong, and as it loosens, now there's lots of blade play, the pivot's loosened, and I'm going to test how the lock holds up even with the pivot loosened completely. So we'll see the reliability of that area. Mr. Szabo or Spyderco didn't want the risk of this knife coming out and popping out open, so they put that spring in there. Which I think is good, but if at that point then, this is a tactical folder, thin the blade even more. I would be fine if this was 3mm or, like a Sabenza stock, and then the blade weighed even less, and there'd be less chance of the blade coming out, and the detent would just be enough.